Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, my nosy, entitled homeowner association neighbor reported me to the HOA board for having an illegal junk car parked on my property. The car in question is a $70,000 1964 Pontiac GTO. They ended up fining me for over $40,000 and I honestly don't know what to do. Here is what happened. Stop me if you have heard this one before, but I've got an HOA horror story you're not gonna believe. And trust me when I say this one was a real pain in the rear. And just like any other HOA nightmare, it started off when I got reported by a nosy neighbor for matters outside my control, starting from warnings and escalating quickly into fines and threats of further action. Why was it something out of my control, you may ask? Well, for a little context here, I am, or was at the time of this happening, a deployed soldier for the US Army, meaning I was not even at home when this crap was going down. So it all started in May when I entered an online competition to win a classic car, a 1964 Pontiac GTO. I did not fancy my chances as I never win anything, but I guess today was my lucky day. 2 weeks later, I get a phone call while I was at the supermarket to say that I had won, and I would be lying if I said I did not dance in the aisles right then and there, much to everyone else's confusion. What was unlucky about this, however, was that I was also just preparing for my second tour of active service as a US soldier, and this meant I would not be around to collect the prize for myself. After a number of long calls and exchanged emails with the competition company, we were able to negotiate a drop-off for the car. It would be left on my driveway next month, where it would safely sit until I returned. That's what I thought, anyway. Next I heard about it was in an unbearably hot summer, I was given an envelope from my platoon leader, which was weird in itself as soldiers did not often get mail while deployed, so I thought it must be important for them to go through all the trouble. Basically, the HOA had written a strongly worded letter informing me of the junk left on my yard while I've been away, asking that I must have someone remove this as soon as I am able to, or otherwise they would be happy to help after applying fines for breaking one of their rules. Unsure how long since they sent it, I started panicking mildly, hoping that they had not already taken it upon themselves too quickly to tow it away to a junkyard or car park. After a number of attempted overseas phone calls, I get through to a representative in my local branch of the HOA, carefully explaining my situation in dire seriousness. They seemed to understand and the matter was resolved. Until this time, I was met by a stack of letters as I was on my return trip home. The first letter was to explain that my car had been towed and was kept in the HOA's president's garage nearby for safety reasons. The rest were fines applied from leaving the car on the driveway. There must have been a huge postal screw-up because some dated back as far as 3 weeks. In total, they added up to over $30,000. As soon as I set foot on home soil, my first stop before home was the president's house to retrieve it, but when approached they seemed reluctant to give it up. Maybe they knew it was not junk after all. Standing my ground, I demanded my car back until they threatened to call the cops on me for what they called intimidation and harassment of the elderly. I was not afraid of the challenge this man posed, and so I welcomed him to try. 20 minutes later, we were explaining our side of the story to a very unimpressed cop, probably wishing he could be anywhere else right now. After a difficult debate with the president, the cop took a neutral stance, whether through indifference or a trained diplomatic response. While I was away, happy at my car's return on the condition that I stayed away from their house, the old president was outraged that the cop was giving in to a thug's demands, threatening to talk to his manager if he did not listen. The HOA president slammed his door on us both and refused to cooperate unless he came back with a warrant. As the cop returned to his car, I told him not to worry as I knew I could handle it without reinforcements. The cop gave me a lift into town and I booked an appointment with the best looking attorney I could find, explaining the gritty details of a petty neighbor's feud. They were very helpful and helped to draft up a suitable lawsuit to set my plans in motion. If he would not return the car when asked nicely, then I would take it back by force. I watched from my driveway as the HOA president answered the door to a delivery driver, tearing open the manila envelope to find the legal demands within. Fast forward a few weeks and the legal proceedings were well and truly underway. The HOA had tried to reconcile privately, but I was not as willing to sweep the situation under the rug as they were. The HOA was found guilty of abusing their rights, theft and harassment of a neighbor. They were ordered to dismiss the fines and return the car immediately. After the trial, I was ecstatic and I was not afraid who knew it. While a part of me considered taking this win modestly, all the trouble the HOA and its president had given me the last few months demanded that I savor this hard-won victory while they glared at me from the sidelines. Aside from my immodest bragging, the feud also gained a lot of attention after it ended up on the local media, causing widespread support from social media and other neighbors. This seemed to tick them off even more. It was clear that they were mad about it, but I didn't know yet how mad. However, 2 nights later, I hear banging outside, causing me to jump out of my bed and my training and instincts coming into sharp effect. I slowly made my way to the source of the continuous sound at the front yard, sensors screaming at me for impending danger, while something beyond my drapes outside glowed brightly. Slowly opening the door, I spotted a figure standing in front of a small bonfire from pieces of my destroyed fence. At my shock, the figure whirled around and to no surprise I saw it was the HOA president trying to burn my car. If that did not anger me enough, he was also waving a shotgun around in my general direction. From his speech and movement, he appeared to be quite intoxicated and quite dangerous. Closing the gap between us before he could react, one hand grabbed the barrel and twisted it out of his grip while my below connected with his nose with a soft crunch, sending him into a collapsed heap on the ground. At this point, other neighbors had taken notice and some were recording the spectacle. I shouted over for one to call the cops while I hurried to put out the fire. The old dude was arrested on charges of arson, threatening with a gun, and intent to cause harm. He was sentenced to 3 years. The end. And yeah, ripe stars, I would say that HOA douchebag definitely got what he deserved in the end. Very satisfying. The next one is titled Petty Revenge. This happened about 25 years ago. Our office moved to a new location in an industrial park in the city. Across the road was a food service company and they started work very early in the morning. Our company is a very large logistics delivery company. We had very limited employee parking along the perimeter of the property. For several weeks we had random cars in the parking lot every morning. It's important to note that the food company had lots of land but very limited parking. The rest of their property was an overgrown field. I would go over and speak to their manager and request that they remind their employees that they could not park on private property. Simple, friendly, and a neighborly request. Fast forward a few weeks and this specific car keeps showing up randomly in our lot. We are not a huge office and I know it's not anyone at our office. I make the trek over to the food company across the road and ask them to remind their employee not to park in our lot due to our limited space. The food company office manager started getting irritated, copped an attitude and told me that their employees would do no such thing, and they have all been told not to park in our lot. I am quite pissed at the attitude and I am a petty guy. Well, we had 2 spare delivery vans that day, so I took the keys and parked one on each side of the car, only a couple of inches from the vehicle. I took the keys with me and waited. I am out of the office for a bit and lo and behold we get a call from the food company. They had to work to call in as our office number is unlisted and they have to go through a 1-800 number and work to get routed to the correct office phone. They are calling because, surprise surprise, apparently an employee wants to go home but cannot get into his car. Cue me coming back to the office, and before moving the vehicles I walked over to the food company and asked them if there was a problem. The office manager sheepishly asked me to move the vans blocking their employee's car, to which I responded, "You mean the car that does not belong to anyone at your office?" I then kindly reminded her that they need to speak to their staff about the parking situation. I moved the vans and watched a guy head out to his car, refusing to look in my direction, and head home for the night. Less than a week later, the field next to the food company was graded and a new gravel parking lot was made. I never saw them park a car on our lot since then. And the next one is titled Maliciously Malicious Compliance. So about 15 years ago I worked in a large hospital for kids in the maintenance department. Our manager, let's call her Karen, was a major witch. No one on our team liked her and we outwardly showed no respect for her after her constant harassment towards us in the 2 years she worked there. She would call us on the maintenance radios and be rude or tell the guys that they were being incompetent. It was beyond micromanagement but also rude on top of it. She expected the maintenance guys to come do work at her house for free. Or she would tell some of the hospital vendors that she would guarantee the hospital contract if they did work at her house for cheap. She used to brag about this to me. Karen and I were the only women in our department of about 25 people. I was a mouthy 20-something-year-old and did not care for her attitude and regularly would say, "Yeah, sure, whatever," when she asked me to do things. I would do what she asked because it was my job, but I would have made a non-committal remark like that. One time she asked me to come to her house and help her pull down dead trees in her backyard since she was having a pool installed. I said no, mainly because I would not do it for someone I liked, let alone her, and pretty soon after she started treating me even worse than she did before. She had been trying to get me in trouble since then, such as CCing her buddy in HR on emails to me asking for status on projects that I was working on and wanted my replies in writing. So fast forward 6 months later, me and some of the maintenance guys were chatting in the office. I was 5 months pregnant with my first baby. She asked me to do something, I don't remember what, and I said, "Yeah, whatever, sure. I will do that in a few minutes," and I turned back around to talk to my coworker. She is then standing behind me and I hear her whisper, "I wish I could slap the crap out of you." I can see my coworker saw her say it too and I made no comment, but I was shocked. I acted like I did not hear her though, and she left the office a minute later to do something. I get up and walk down the hall to Employee Health Department because I am fuming and my heart was racing. I was pissed. Also, I was 5 months pregnant. The EH nurse has me lay down for a bit, take my vitals, write up a formal report. An hour later sends me back to my desk as okay to continue working. When I log back in, I see an email from Karen with HR CC'd asking where I'd been for the last hour, as she called the office phone a bunch of times and had abandoned my desk, supposedly. So then I emailed her back. "I apologize for being away from my desk. When you said you would like to slap the crap out of me, I was so upset that I had to be calmed down and have mine and my baby's vitals checked at Employee Health Department, and they were concerned about my hostile working environment and wanted me to stay there for a full hour. I made sure I BCC'd her buddy in HR and all of HR, her boss and his boss, to make sure everyone saw it. I was summoned to HR about 30 minutes later. I knew Karen had not seen my reply yet. This was early 2000s and her computer was down in the office near me. They had me go home for the day and put me on admin leave for 3 extra days. I came back to the office to see her desk had been emptied out and we never saw her again. Those guys in maintenance threw me the best baby shower ever 3 months later. And the next one is an Am I the A-hole story. So last week was my stepdaughter's SD 14th birthday. She was in the hospital days prior for a medical issue and now she is better. My husband threw her a small birthday party. Unbeknownst to me, my boys 16 and 12 decided to pull a funny prank and mess with the birthday cake that they made for her. Instead of adding icing on the cake, they added mayonnaise. It did not go well and my SD's reaction was to cry. My husband blew up at the boys for what they did, but they said they were just trying to prank her since it is the norm and they always prank each other. My husband said it was the wrong time to do this on her birthday, especially after getting out of the hospital. He told the boys that they ruined her birthday, but I told him he exaggerated with this statement. He got upset and yelled at me for defending this behavior and being an enabler. I am because the boys love her and that's why they act like this, but my husband was having none of that. Both he and SD are not speaking to me or the boys. Am I the butthole for saying that he exaggerated? Comment number 1. Unless there was a second cake with actual icing, that is seriously not a prank. It is just being an a-hole, and I don't even like cake. You are clearly the a-hole. Comment number 2. You are the a-hole. You are teaching your boys abuse is okay if they say it's out of love. A prank is only okay if everyone finds it funny. Stop enabling them. And yeah guys, let me know what you think about this. Do you think that OP is the a-hole or not? Personally, I would say OP is to some degree enabling her boys to do this, and it certainly is not okay. Even if everyone finds it funny, I don't think the birthday kid in this situation would ever find that funny. It is just a prank at the wrong place at the wrong time if you ask me. Anyway, the next one is titled, I don't work here, dude. So I work at a car dealership. We have a company policy where when someone wants to pay with a cashier's check, we have to accompany them at the bank to avoid fraud. Anyway, I was at the bank with my clients. The bank was very busy with a few workers. There was a long line for tellers and the people waiting started getting a little grumpy, all talking amongst each other about the slow service. Eventually, this old guy in line looks at me and says, "Why don't you quit standing around and get back there?" And I looked at him shocked and confused. He said, "Yeah, I'm talking to you. Quit being lazy and get back there and do something." I said, "I don't work here." And he said, "Oh sure you do. I see your uniform and name tag." I responded, "Yeah, no, this is for the car dealership. I work there." He did not say a single word in response. It was quiet and awkward. Maybe 5 minutes later he asked if name of my coworker still works there. Turns out he's a long-term customer of ours and has bought 4 of our cars. I saw him in the dealership the other day and I smiled at him. And yeah, Ripe Stars, if you have watched until here, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and please also turn on the bell notifications by clicking on the bell to not miss any of my videos. Sometimes the YouTube algorithm sort of screws me over, so to prevent not seeing my videos, please click that bell. Thank you so much. And the next one is titled Land Deal Gone Awry, A Tale of Vengeance. And guys, if I pronounced that wrong, please let me know in the comments. Anyway, disclaimer, this tale of revenge was thought up and carried out by my parents and neighbor. My parents live in a nice quiet neighborhood. For the most part everyone gets along well and the neighborhood exists in its own little bubble. The only time you see people from outside the neighborhood bubble is on Halloween. Our backyard neighbor, a single middle-aged woman who we will call Sally, was kind of adopted by our family and came to all holiday parties and family get-togethers. We all love her and that made our revenge all the more satisfying. Sally had a next-door neighbor who owned a lot between Sally's house and her own. When the neighbor expressed an interest in selling the lot, Sally offered to purchase it and a deal was made. Unfortunately, Sally's neighbor died prior to the land deal being finalized and the lot went into her assets to be distributed to her only daughter, who we will call Resting Witch Face or RBF. RBF disliked Sally and refused to sell the empty lot to her because she believed Sally had been attempting to screw her mother over. RBF claimed she was going to sell it to an interested developer who would build a house there. When my parents heard this, they were upset. Our house was on a hill and the empty lot also ran up to our backyard. My parents didn't want to look down into another house and backyard. Likewise, Sally did not want a house next to her, so she tried one last time to purchase the lot. She offered more than she had originally planned on paying, but RBF said she would never sell the lot to her. My parents and Sally hatched a plan though. My parents, whom RBF didn't know, had an attorney draft a purchase offer for the empty lot. They offered several thousand less than Sally's original offer had been. RBF hemmed and hawed but came back with a counter offer equivalent to Sally's original offer. My parents offered her 5,000 less and she accepted. After the sale was finalized, my parents sold the lot to Sally for the same price they purchased it. Sally ended up receiving the lot for 5,000 less than she had originally agreed to pay, and over 10,000 less than what she offered to RBF. RBF did find out what happened and tried to negate the contract with my parents on accounts of fraud, but that is obviously not a legitimate claim. RBF never spoke to Sally or to my parents after she learned what happened. Another interesting tidbit, after purchasing the lot, my parents notified the town of their intent to not develop the property so nobody can ever build a single-family dwelling on it. Killed 2 birds with 1 stone, no downhill neighbor, and the property stays in the family. And guys, that is what I would call absolutely genius pro-revenge. In my opinion, that was one of the most satisfying revenge stories we have read in a long while. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, I want to ask you for a favor. If you have watched until here, please check out my new channel called The Readers, where I and other voice actors post daily stories that you will very much enjoy. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again tomorrow.